Welcome to the Arseholics podcast. We just had some technical difficulties, so apologies if you joined live and we're a little bit late. There is like some like funny noise going on in the background, but maybe that's just going to add to the entertainment. Maybe it can be like some sort of background music while this podcast goes on. I guess it's like a little maraca going on. So you've got me, Raj. If you haven't got the pleasure of seeing who's on because you're listening to this just via Spotify or whatever, you got me, Raj, on. You've got Aaron and Mize is going to join us a little bit later, but we've got a special guest. I mean, I think he's probably the only person to be on the show twice, which is amazing. We've got Kish on, who was in the Palace end today. So I don't know how many other podcasts out there that have got, a couple of people from the Arsenal end, one person from the Palace end. I mean, we've surely, we're surely top of the pile in that respect. Kish, how's it going, my friend? Thank you for joining the podcast today.
No, brilliant. Thank you for having me. And like I said, hopefully there's no noise distortion. And as I said to you all earlier before the game, it's a pleasure, obviously, to be asked to come back. And obviously, it's amazing that I'm on your 101st one. And obviously, well done to get into 100. And I feel like the game today was a bit 101 for me, to be honest. It wasn't the best game, but yeah, no, I'm really happy to be on. And it was good to see what I was saying to you before. It was great to see the happiness on at least 3/4 of the stadium unravel, and it was Rob Holding, right? But yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, no, and it'll be great to get your perspective, Kish, because obviously, we've seen it from one perspective, not just as an Arsenal fan, but as fans of the North Bank, and obviously you're at the other end, and it was an interesting game because when we were in the pub afterwards trying to sort of analyze it, it was a bit of a weird one to analyze. But let's get into it, because today there was a lot. We did a podcast after our last Premier League game, and we tried to preview the Palace game. But since that podcast, a lot's happened. A lot happened to both our teams, right? Arsenal went to the Europa League thinking that we were probably gonna win. We didn't win. In fact, it was probably the worst case scenario where we went to extra time, penalties, lost. Not just that, picked up a couple of injuries on the way. Tomiyasu in crutches. Don't know when he'll be back. Saliba, undefined. Hopefully it's not too bad, but he's still out. So it's the worst kind of scenario that we had then. It was only a couple of days ago. And then obviously Palace as well. Patrick Vieira's gone, and we'll get into that properly later. But, it was a potential, kind of murmuring that it could happen, but it was very hypothetical, but it happened. Paddy McCarthy came in to take over the side temporarily anyway. So all kinds of things going on from a Palace perspective as well. But I suppose in the end, Aaron, and I'll come to you first, the prediction that you had on the game beforehand was that we would sort of win by a decent scoreline. And that was, I think, mainly predicated by the fact that Palace have had some challenges recently. They hadn't had any shots on target for 3 games coming into this one. And obviously we've been very good at home. But, in that respect, did today offer you no surprises?
Yeah, I was optimistic last week, but then honestly, if you'd asked me pre-game, I was a bit concerned, and it was a lot better than I thought it would be, because I thought after 120 minutes on Thursday, a couple of injuries, I thought, and like legs being a bit players being a bit leggy, it could have gone very wrong. But actually, like, fair play to this team, because they keep just doing what they need to do in the league. And there's another game where we kind of expected to win, and the players kind of just showed up, won the game, didn't mess about, no real drama, and we move on. Fair play.
It was that sort of game, wasn't it? Because it lacked drama. It lacked the kind of wins that we've been sort of having fairly recently, like in terms of Bournemouth, for example. This was very, very different. Kish, from a Palace perspective, obviously you came into the game. We spoke before the pub, and you had some kind of interesting perspectives. But again, it wasn't a game that you expected to win. But let's just talk about how you guys started the game, or how the game played out at the beginning. And I will kind of say I really want to get into all the stuff that's happened at Palace over the last couple of days, and we will get onto that. But just as far as the game is concerned, mate, what did it start off like you thought it would under Paddy McCarthy?
No, not really. Actually, to be honest, I thought we'd be a bit more front-footed with what we were trying to achieve in the game, but it became very clear very early on that Edouard wasn't up for being very good today, and that caused us all sorts of problems. I think up front we didn't have an outlet, but I think oddly until you scored, it wasn't like you were. I mean, you had very good retention of the ball, and I was surprised that we weren't more in your face about things, partly because of what Aaron had mentioned before. You'd done 120 minutes. Yeah, you'd freshen the squad up a little, but we didn't really seize on the sort of maybe anxiety that there could have been at the game like this. And I thought while we controlled our emotions pretty well as a 10 in front of the keeper, there still wasn't really any urgency to go out there and do anything. I mean, I was delighted that we had some chances, obviously, in that respect. But I think up until the goal, if we could have gone in 1-0 down at half time, maybe that would have made a little difference. But I think it was a bit of it almost felt, I mean, it was apt that George Graham came on at half time because it was very much defend as a team and, try and just keep going. We had chances, which were good. And I think, I mean, Edouard, again, I know it was flagged offside at the start, but if he puts that in and it isn't offside, all of a sudden we've got something to protect, and we didn't defend terribly, but I think the pace of the game got to some of our players more than it did yours. I think that's kudos to yourselves and Arteta for freshening up team in a way that didn't seem to, I had no idea you played on Thursday. At no point was I like, oh, you're starting to get tired. So from our point of view, I felt, bearing in mind we lost Anderson in the warm up as well, which would have had a huge effect on the boys. Like, I know one player doesn't make you, but James Tompkins is 34. He doesn't play very often for us. And when he does, it's normally in a really awkward scenario. And I'm sure he's thinking he was just going to come and have a nice day and relax and watch some good football. And to then have to get, 10 minutes. And he didn't actually play that badly. I know we conceded 4 goals, but he wasn't really culpable for very many of them. And he played pretty well considering. But to lose arguably our best defender in the warm-up, which sums up our luck a little bit, but also, I wasn't too upset with the first half, but I think the way the goals then transpired, they were partly Arsenal being very good at recycling possession and really making it work for them, but also just our positioning again, just always very lackluster. So I was happy for the first half an hour. I think actually you guys, just taking your time, and if we could have just kept frustrating you, that perhaps we could have carried that on to the second half. But I think we just didn't have enough belief in our own ability.
Well, it's interesting parallels, talking about the Tompkins thing. It's very interesting parallels in that respect, right? Because Joachim Andersen has been phenomenal for you guys this season, as has William Saliba for us. So, going into this game, you had to field Tompkins, which was, very, very last minute. And, obviously we had a little bit more to prepare with, but we ended up, playing Holding, which was very, very different to, this is for Holding's first Premier League start, I guess, in, however long. And interestingly, despite kind of the fact that, we did have a decent amount of possession, and you sort of referred to the chance that Edouard missed, which was offside. But before that, you guys had the best chance of the game where you hit the post. I mean, Aaron, and you remember that was that, I think Zaha was kind of cut in from the left-hand side. Did Ben White, don't know why Ben White didn't show him wide, but Ben White decided not to. He came in, and it was a pretty decent shot that I think, Ramsdale did pretty well to get down to, but then it bounces off the post and it could go anywhere, right?
Yeah, that was good. I don't know, was that Zaha? I can't remember, but I can't remember. There was a couple. There was one where Ramsdale made a save and it was off, and then it was offside. I don't think that was Zaha. And then
that was
the second one.
That was Edouard. Yeah,
that was Edouard. And then the second one where it might have been Zaha then who kind of hit it, and then it bounced off, I think, Ramsdale's foot or something like that, and then onto his back, and then I don't know what happened. Look, I think at the start it was even, but actually Ramsdale's continue to do that thing where he just continues to make big saves in big moments, and he goes under the radar a bit at just how many big saves he makes. And even that first one, I wasn't sure it was offside when I first saw it, but Ramsdale didn't know. He had to make the save, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when he made the save, he didn't know. And the referee, the linesman obviously flags late, as is the kind of procedure nowadays, which is super annoying. But look, I think we did what we had to do. And we kind of we stayed in the game, and everyone did their bit. because look, without Saliba, we were always going to concede a few chances here and there. And actually, I think Rob Holding was pretty good all game, but generally, like Ben White got done, and actually, I thought Ben White had a really good game going forward. But they create their moments, and Palace have got the types of players who can, in moments, make any defense look average. And I think Ramsdale just again game after game, like I said before, just continues to make big saves and keeps us in those games, so that when the forward players do find their moments, they make them count.
Kish, how different did you find Palace's setup today was versus, say, what you would have expected it to be under a Vieira?
I wouldn't say it was too dissimilar in terms of selection, because obviously we don't have a huge pool of players to pick from. But I think the overriding feeling I had during and after the game, especially, was would we have lost 4-1 if Patrick Vieira was in charge? And my general feeling is no, we wouldn't have. We might have lost 1-0 or maybe 2-1. Tactically, Paddy McCarthy didn't do very much differently. I think he let the boys express themselves a little bit more, let them be a bit more creative. But I don't know if that was partly because some of the more senior pros who played quite well, I think Will played quite well, they just decided that was what they were going to do. I think it was a surreal sort of game for some things, because I thought Stuart Atwell had a pretty poor game. I don't think he helped either team, but that might have been his way of reffing. He's never been a great ref for me, and I thought he didn't give. He let it be physical, but that didn't suit us. I think it suited Arsenal a bit more. But in general, tactically, I thought we were still very inflexible. I think the problem when you've got a midfield of Luka Milivojevic and Decore who aren't the fastest, who aren't most mobile, you do actually need to let the game be sort of broken down. And they were getting bullied, and I think I'm surprised that Luka started ahead of Will Hughes, because I thought he's a bit more flexible. And actually, he could hold on to the ball. Luka at times did do a couple of okay things, but him as well as, again, I talk about it a lot with Joel Ward, but I would have preferred to see Nathaniel Klein play, because I think they're both just been very poor all season. So I was surprised to see them both playing today. And I don't think under Vieira, I know we'll get to it later, I don't think we lose 4-1, which led me ultimately to wonder what the point of sacking him was, really, because goal difference might play a key role for you and us going forward. And actually, I don't know how much confidence the boys can take from a 4-1 defeat in a derby. So I was, but yeah, to your initial point, I think Paddy McCarthy, he looked like he was paying lip service, I think, on the side. I don't think there was much coming from him in a sort of coherent managerial way. I think it was more a case of the boys were going out there, and you could tell from about the 60th minute onwards that they were just kind of doing what they wanted. There wasn't any fluidity. The subs weren't great. I left the game appreciating the fact that we lost a very good team, but that I don't think you ever get out of second gear, in my opinion. So I don't know how you all feel about it, but for a team that just played 120 minutes, we let you. Obviously, you were going to have possession of the ball, but we didn't really make you work for that 4-1. That's what's weird about the game. You scored 4 goals. I can't think of many more chances, but you scored the chances that you were given, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, on that, Aaron, would you want to sort of answer that directly? Because what I was going to ask you is, who do you think stood out from an Arsenal perspective, performance-wise? Because I do agree with that, with Kish's point there. One of the comments I made to Mize during the game was that I was really annoyed in that first, until we scored, I was really annoyed that we didn't test the keeper more, given this is a kid, and bloody hell, like, I didn't realize how small he was, like, until I saw him in real life, like, and I kept thinking, because obviously we're at the other end from where Arsenal was shooting at the beginning, and you see this figure of the keeper in the goal, and I kept thinking, if the ball goes in the top corner, I swear he can't reach it. Like that's what it looked like visually to me. So I kept thinking, why aren't we shooting more? But we didn't. We actually, in fact, and maybe that's credit to Palace, like, they sort of prevented us from being able to, I guess, have a lot of shots on goal. But anyway, but what did you think, Aaron, in terms of, like, sort of our kind of individual performances? Obviously, Martinelli scored a nice goal first up. Saka's come away with 2. Granit Xhaka scored 1, but who for you played well for Arsenal today?
I think there was quite a few really good performances. I thought Saka, obviously, 2 goals and assist. You can't take the headlines away from him, and he continues to be phenomenal. Odegaard again continues to be phenomenal. I think actually it's this entire team now where we've got this system that I've been praising time after time, which is Trossard up front in a sort of false nine-ish type role, just doing Trossard things, and he just gets the best out of the players around him, and that allows Martinelli and Saka, compared to when Eddie Nketiah was up front, to just get the best out of their games. And I thought Ben White had a really good game. I know we talked earlier on where he struggled a bit, but kind of second half especially, he really kind of imposed himself going forward. I thought Zinchenko was good. I thought Xhaka was good. I thought Partey maybe had a bit of a reserve game generally, but Partey's got such high standards that he can't drop a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 every game. Honestly, I just think that this team now is so comfortable in this system that sometimes they're so confident now that they don't have to force it anymore, that actually they can kind of sit in third or fourth gear and they know that eventually the chances will come and the goal will come. And as long as the defenders do their job and keep it tight at the back, all they have to do is be patient. And usually within 60, 70 minutes will be a goal or two up. And that is kind of testament to the manager and the team and the players and kind of everyone around kind of just the whole procedure of how we approach games. It's not rushed. It's not panic. It's calm. And even though we have kind of had extra time on Thursday, they still have the energy levels to just go and go again.
It's fair. Kish, we obviously have the luxury of going every week to see Arsenal. You go to see Palace, most games home and away. I'd love to get your perspectives on what you saw from Arsenal today. We have perspectives on our expectations of the players. We see them every week. There was sometimes where I think we wonder whether are the players as bad as sometimes we make out to be at times, or as good as sometimes we make out to be at times. What Arsenal players today stood out for you, and did anyone surprise you seeing them live not as frequently as us? Did anyone play, and did you think, well, he's a really good player?
Well, it's really funny because I was going to say Thomas Partey. I thought he was brilliant. I think I've seen him play a couple of times before, and he's not had great games. And I really was impressed. But I mean, again, we didn't have a great midfield, but I think there was a moment in the second half where it looked like he just ripped through about three of our midfield. I think Decore and Schlupp were trying to tackle him, and he left them both looking like they'd been knocked out. And I was just thinking he didn't break a sweat doing it. And I thought he looked very complete, as in very comfortable. And I take your point. So I've seen him play a bit this season that he probably could have played better. But I think when he needed to play well, he played well. Odegaard is the first time I've seen him play in a little while live when he's played really, really well. And again, I'd say he was effortless. That's, he really wasn't trying that hard, I don't think. It was all very natural. And you can see a team very comfortable in their own skin. That's what, I know people... other more confused fans have a DNA that they keep going on about and whatnot, but it feels like Arsenal building a DNA again, and which seems to be very sort of effervescent through the players, that one goes in, one comes out, everyone sort of seems to seamlessly fit in. I thought Gabriel had a very good game as well. I thought I was watching Holding to see how he would cope, and I thought he had a good game, but I think the ref helped him have a good game in some instances. But regardless, I think Saka, I don't think Saka was trying that hard either, but anytime he wanted to, he really could turn on the burners, and it really caused us a lot of problems. But watching Arsenal now, I was speaking to the people on the way back, obviously, because as you forewarned me, the queue in them to get to home in Islington. I'm speaking to a lot of fans, and they weren't being mean or condescending, but there's an expectancy now, which there might not have been obviously a couple of years ago when you were building towards it, that they were taking care of business. They just had to go there. We had to get the 3 points and then roll on and keep going. And that's what it felt like. It felt a very professional performance, actually, considering the emotional Thursday night you all would have had, and obviously it's a squad. It's not just those players who lose. The whole team lost in theory. So, but no, I was really impressed in general. I mean, Ramsdale, there was a point, I think it was like the 85th minute, and he just hoofed an Edison-esque pass.
I know which one you're talking about.
And I was just thinking, I was just like, the whole time, just give us a break, mate. Like I think we had a corner, and we had no one back, and it was just like, and I just thought to myself, that was very Man City-esque, obviously the way he did it. But I've never seen his I've seen his shot saving before because he's come a couple of, but I've never seen him so comfortable with his distribution, and I was very impressed by that. And You know, you had. I know you had the Polish centre back come on and have his debut, and he seemed to slot in well. But in general, there was. I think if I don't even think Martinelli had a very good game. But when he was asked to score a goal, he scored a goal. You know, he cut in. And one of the fans in our area was complaining that he thought the keeper could have saved it, and I just burst out laughing. I was like, "Are you kidding?" Our keeper's like 4'5", but regardless, I didn't think he could save that. But anyone who, it was almost a case of anyone who felt that they needed to play their bit in increments did it. And they tagged each other in. Saka, you play well for 15. Martinelli. It was very, from that point of view, it was, I felt like we could see all the problems and we were just powerless to stop it.
No, it's good perception. I want to talk and firstly, welcome Mize. Mize, thanks for joining, mate. Appreciate it, man. Long time no see. It's been a few hours. Just to get back to where we were, I want to quickly, before we start looking past this game, because there's some brilliant things on the agenda today, I think. Kish, I want to ask your perspective and then maybe get the guys' perspective on two right wingers today. Yeah. So, Bukayo Saka, at the end of the game, there was an interview question that went to Mikel Arteta. One of the interviewers said, "Is he the best winger in the Premier League right now?" And Arteta sort of dodged the question. I want to ask you about him, and I want to ask you about Michael Olise. But just tell me about Bukayo Saka. Again, we sort of been waxing lyrical about him, but at the same time, I think, particularly on this podcast, we've been fairly cautious about hyping him up that much because actually we haven't won anything yet. He hasn't won anything on a personal level, and so to be talking about world class. We've been very hesitant about that. But the question was fielded today about, is he the best winger in the Premier League right now? I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. You, as a Crystal Palace fan, and crucially not an Arsenal fan, what do you think about that statement?
I mean, it's a big question to have anyone ask to a manager as well. But I think he's world class. I think he's a world class player. I think he could slot into most teams in the world because he seems to be a very smart boy. He's only, what is he, 21? And he's already amassed circa 20 England caps and played at Arsenal. He broke into the team very early and he's done really well. I look at him sometimes. I think I remember when Wilf broke into the team. I remember all the fanfare. For us, it's a much bigger deal, obviously, because we don't get that many good players coming through that often. And he's probably better than Wilf was at that age. And Wilf obviously got his move to Man United. But this is Saka today. Obviously, he was meant to be tired, and he's in it. But he's undroppable, isn't he? There's no way you're dropping Saka in the form or just the confidence he plays with. And I think the question. He's arguably one of the best, if not the best in the league, but he's a world-class winger, which if he carries on this trajectory and, for you, it's great if he does. I'm sure at some point in his career, he'll want to go to one of those big Spanish teams or, because he could easily play there. Like, you look at, they do have a need sometimes for that type of flair in those leagues, and he has it in abundance. He's very confident as well. He doesn't seem to be fazed by any of that stuff. You look back to the stuff in the penalty against Italy and all those things, and he's carried it with him. Again, I think he is 21, right? 22. He's ridiculously young still, I'm sure, and he's just taken it all in his stride, and he's obviously been a brilliant player for you this season. And I think it helps that he's, your experienced players are playing really, I think Xhaka and a few of those guys, everyone seems to be really level-headed and they've probably taken good care of him. And I think the reception he received from fans as well after, he's very likable, which helps, but he's playing fun football. He looks like he's enjoying playing. And that he's got a very similar prognosis to Wolf in the sense that he looks like, he just likes playing football. He just wants to play, he wants to win. He likes to battle for everything. And just hope he can avoid getting a big injury or something, because I know that's where it always went wrong for Wolf. He wasn't always horrifically injury prone, but wingers, they get injured, hammies, stuff like that. You just got to keep him caught on walls sometimes. But at the stage you're in, he has to play every game.
Agree. Miles, going to come to you because I know I said Olise as well, but I'm going to go Olise and Zaha for this question. We talked a lot about wingers and the fact that, like Kish just said now, Saka's basically undroppable for Arsenal. And that's been a big bane, when we worry about our squad management and worry about the idea of him getting injured. We've been clamoring for the fact that we need someone who can play on that right wing. Today we had, we got to see Olise play, who's been, I think someone who's been touted as someone who a lot of Arsenal fans really like the look of, and Zaha, he'd been linked with Arsenal in the past, etc. are the very different stages in their career. What do you think about both those guys, Mai Zaha and Olise? Would you have them at Arsenal?
Olise, hi guys, by the way, apologies for being late. So Olise, I've liked what I've seen of Olise in the past. But I think look, I don't, as I say with every kind of team other than Arsenal, I don't watch Palace week in, week out. So maybe I'm not kind of best qualified to sort of say what level he's at. But I feel like I've seen moments from him as opposed to like consistent performances. So I think if you watch highlights of Elisa, he looks really, really good. He looks like a very exciting player, like a tricky winger, someone who's comfortable taking people on, and kind of similar to Saka in what Kish was just saying, like confident in his own ability. But I just don't know if I've seen enough of it to really judge him properly, if that makes sense. But look, he's, I think, a similar age. He's a similar age to Saka. And so you kind of look at, I could be wrong on that, but you kind of look at the levels of both of those players, Elise against Saka, and, Saka's miles ahead. And I guess part of that is down to the team that Saka's playing for. But potentially he might be, someone that we could look at. But I wonder if, if we're looking kind of ahead to the transfer market, and you're looking at where Arsenal strengthen on the assumption that we're, a Champions League team next season, I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal go for someone more experienced, just because that's what we seem to, that's what we did in January to strengthen the squad in January in positions where we needed, people that could come in, players that could come in and do a job and were reliable, and we knew what we were going to get from them for the next couple of seasons, and especially this like 6-month period, the run-in essentially. And I wonder if there might be another player out there that we might look. I don't know who potentially, but there might be another player out there that we might look at that is, a player that's happy to be a squad player, like Kish was just saying. Saka's pretty much undroppable, but just the guy that comes in for 10, 15 games, or if Saka needs a rest. Is
that Zaha? Could Zaha be that guy?
Was that? I've kind of championed for Zaha quite a bit over the last couple of years. I think we all have, to be honest. I love Zaha. I really rate him. I don't think he had his best game today, but today wasn't sort of what to judge him on in terms of like, as a game. But like he's been consistently a very good Premier League player for the last, I don't know, 6-7 years, whatever it is. He's always scored goals. He's just like, he gets you off your seat as well, which is what I love about him. And again, he's a player that's not scared of trying something different. And he's got output. He's got output at the end of the day. And he's done that for Palace. And he's been their main guy. So I would love to see Zaha in the Arsenal squad. But I just wonder, like, has his like big move, that has that time, that window that you had for a big move. Obviously, he moved to United, came back to Palace, but has window now passed? Because I know he's not like old in the sense he's not over the hill or anything. I think he's 29, 30. I could, again, not sure. I'm kind of guessing here. But I wonder if, it feels like it might be a little bit of a gamble in some ways, but I guess, is he on a free this summer or next?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is on a free. Yeah, this summer. Like
So like for me, he would be a great addition to Arsenal. And I think, when was it, last summer or last January, we were looking, it was last January when we didn't buy anyone, and obviously we got pipped to 4th by Spurs. And I remember that January window, Zaha was being linked, and he would have been an ideal person to come in, again, kind of similar to what we've done with Trossard this window. And it obviously didn't happen. But look, I really do rate Zaha. I just wonder if maybe that kind of opportunity for him has come and gone. But who knows, if he's on a free, then that's it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a no-brainer, but I can see he's definitely going to go to another big club or a Premier League team if he wants to stay in the Premier League. So I could, why not? Can't see any reason why it wouldn't work, to be honest. But obviously he's predominantly he plays down the left, right? I know he could probably play on the right, and I think for United he played on the right, if I remember correctly. But I don't know if it is. I mean, again, Kish, you probably know better, right? Is he comfortable playing down?
Yeah. He. I think he's good on both flanks, and he's actually oddly half decent through the middle as well. But with the quality that you'd have around him, it would just make it a lot easier for him. I think he's always had to play, even if it's out of position in inverted commas, it's always give him the ball anyway, wherever he is. So, even if he was standing in centre midfield, they'd give him the ball. But he's got a lot of output on the left, and he's pretty two-footed when he wants to be, but it's more that he likes to hug the touchline, and I don't think it matters to him left or right. I don't think I think to your point, I think it's his destiny to play for Arsenal. I really do, because I think this will be the third time, if you do try and get him in the summer, that you would have tried to get him. And after the Pepe thing, and after like I think he wants to play for Arsenal. I don't think he's making noises, but I know that he's settled in London. He's obviously, I think he supports Arsenal growing up as well. I think he would like Arsenal to sort of offer him a sort of squad role if you make the Champions League, because he would go. I think he would go, and I think I would be happy for him. I don't mind where he goes per se, but he's been a great servant for the club, and I think we need to both agree that for us to get better as a team, we need to figure out how to get better without him. And I think he'd do a great job with you guys. I think Elise is a little different, because I think he's got much more room for manoeuvre, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was looking to leave soon as well, because if we, and to your point about the comparison between him and Saka age-wise, I think he's a little younger, but I always hark back to Aaron Wan-Bissaka as an example. He went to play at Man United for Ole Solskjaer, who doesn't know how to coach players. He starts to play under Ten Hag, who can coach players, and he actually looks good again. And I think Elise needs to be managed by someone who, like Arteta, like Pep, someone who will show him how to play the role they want him to play. Because right now at Palace, no one's doing that. He's not going to get that from Roy Hodgson. He wasn't getting it from Vieira too much, but it was working. The next person isn't, they have to be able to sit and coach a player into his potential. And you've been very fortunate, obviously. Arteta's been able to get the best out of Saka and Martinelli, and actually quite a few of your players for that. But we've just never been able to do that with some of our younger players, hence why it never looks like they're consistent. It's because they're not getting coached correctly, in my opinion.
Yeah, moving on, Kish, to we've got a few more topics to cover. Before I go on to just getting your thoughts on Vieira, I'm just going to talk a little bit now about what today's result means for everyone. Right, so now Arsenal are 8 points clear at the top, played a game over Man City. Aaron, and we're going into an international break now. I think we obviously come back after that international break and we play Leeds, but Man City play Liverpool at home just before. It's therefore one of those things where if Man City don't beat Liverpool, then Arsenal, and if Arsenal beat Leeds, that gap can extend to about 10 points. How do you feel right now in terms of the title race? How do you feel about Arsenal's prospects versus the last time I asked you that question?
Yeah, I'm still very uncertain, because I still think you look at the way City are playing, especially now in the last couple of games, they seem to have really clicked, and it sounds dumb, but they seem to have figured out how to play with Haaland in the team a bit more, in the sense that he just seems so much more integral to the way City are playing at the moment. And I think over the last couple of months, he kind of drifted in and out of games a bit. And I do think City are capable of pretty much winning every single game. They'll go into every single game as favourites, even the game against us. And it's going to be tricky. But I think, look, today's result for me was just like, I know we played well, but actually before that, I would have said just get a win. It doesn't matter how well we play. This was one where you kind of push players, and hypothetically, if Saliba had a 50% chance of being fit, I would have played him today, just because I think to have an opportunity to go into the international break with an 8-point gap is huge, because the players can train, they can go over their countries knowing that there's a big gap, and then it will restart again in 2 weeks' time with City having to play Liverpool with an 8-point gap, which is another psychological thing. And if we hadn't got a win today, I think the psychology of that City-Liverpool game and our game against Leeds would potentially be very different. So I think it was important. But actually then, now that we got the win, I think you look at it and you actually say, what, is it 5 wins in a row now, or even 6 in the league?
6.
Since we lost to City?
Six wins.
And then we'll be, be very, very confident of getting something against Leeds and getting a win there. and then it goes on to that tricky patch of fixtures with Liverpool, and then I think City to come in a few weeks after that. And look, I think we as fans, we look at the table. We, in the pub today, we started trying to work out where City will drop points and all that. But we've just got to go game by game, because I think the worst thing we can do is actually turn this into a bit of a run-in and have a run-in mentality of like watching what City do. We've gone so far this season, being the underdogs, but also just going game by game and beating the teams that we have to beat. And we just need to continue doing that. Yes, it's going to get harder. Yes, we're going to, the teams that we have to beat are going to be Liverpool soon. It's going to be Chelsea. It's going to be Newcastle, and it will at one point be City. But if we keep it with this game by game mentality, I think we might just almost get there without having to worry about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. As kind of Aaron said, there's maybe a feeling that's creeping that Man City are now back on track with regards to playing with Haaland, with the amount of goals that he scored in the last few games. I think it's ridiculous, the numbers. But at the same time, it's become quite clear that, not become quite clear. I think we've always felt that the Champions League is Man City's priority. They're through. They're playing Bayern Munich in I think a couple of weeks' time, is it? It's a big tie for them. It's a difficult game, but you probably expect them to win. How big do you think Man City's Champions League campaign is going to impact the title race?
Yeah, massively. Well, obviously, I'm hoping it'll be a distraction for them, but I think it's massive for them. I think, the story around Pep wanting to and needing to win the Champions League for City has been there from day one, really, and especially after he won the first Premier League title for them. It's always been about getting that first Champions League for City, and I'm sure he must be absolutely desperate to do it before he leaves. So this season could just be like, if you're City now, as of tonight, let's say, looking ahead to the next set of games, and you look at you look at being 8 points behind Arsenal, and you probably, we as Arsenal fans have been really kind of cautious, right? And we're still cautious now. We're still like, oh, are we gonna, where are we gonna go to Anfield and get smashed, or we're gonna drop points there? And like Aaron just said, we go to City, we go to the Etihad, and we're probably not going to be going there as favourites. But like, if you're sitting in City shoes, they're probably looking at thinking, bloody hell, Arsenal just played 100. I don't know if you guys mentioned this before, before I joined, but Arsenal just played, extra time against Lisbon, went out disappointingly, just on Thursday night, and they were able to brush themselves down, go again, pretty much were able to pick a full strength team minus Saliba, but a lot of those players played the majority of that game on Thursday, and were able to put in a performance like that where it wasn't, it was, I don't want to say it was comfortable as such, but it was a pretty solid performance. And, there weren't too many hairy moments, I guess you could say. Like, we controlled the game quite well, I thought. And if you're City, you must be looking at it thinking, shit, like, these guys are, they're serious. And I think we've done that every time there's been a setback. We've come back from that setback, and, like Aaron just said, 6 wins on the bounce since the City defeat. That is seriously impressive. So I think Pep might be looking at it and thinking, this, Arsenal might just be too good for them this season. Like, we might just be too good for City this season. Look, maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but based on what I've seen so far, the first 28 games, I'm not saying we're going to win the league, but I have no reason to sort of doubt this Arsenal team, if you know what I mean. And
can I say that you're going to win the league? Am I allowed to say that?
Well, I mean, we were naturally going to evolve onto you, mate. So if Mize is done, if Mize has no closing comments, I would want to know what the non-Arsenal fan thinks.
I genuinely think, I know you've got to tread carefully with some of your emotions. Obviously, you've seen a lot. I mean, I think you're in a cracking position, not because of the way the 8 points are set out, but even the fixtures I think are quite kind for you when you think that you've got to play a West Ham team that all have their eyes on Europe, and you've got to play Chelsea, who might still be in Europe, Man City, who will be in Europe, Brighton, who I think will have an FA Cup semi-final around that time as well. I think you might have just really got very fortunate with that as well. But based on the we joked about earlier about the happiness a bit. I think you should sort of not worry so much about what Man City are doing, because I don't know that they're worried so much about what you're doing. I think you guys you've got to where you've got to by not thinking about what Man City are doing, but you're playing your football and playing it well, and being very interchangeable. And I really, I know you're not going to be delighted by me to say this, but I think it's yours to throw away now. I really do. It's 10 games to go. There are 6 games which are eminently winnable. When you've got Southampton, Leeds, I think you've got Wolves, Forest. I mean, you would expect here. You don't need me to say. You'd expect 12 points from that. That leaves 5 games left, and out of those, one of them is one of your biggest rivals. Don't lose there, and you probably win the league. I think. I mean, I wasn't 100% sure. Maybe around February when things were starting to shift. I think when City overtook you, I can't remember when that was. I started to think, oh, actually, but this narrative that City, know how to win, all this bollocks. I mean, it doesn't matter, does it? You're 8 points clear, and you've got good fixtures, and I think you'll win the league now. I really do. Not because you beat us 4-1, I should say, but in general, the feeling is that. And it's not a comparative to Leicester either, because I think your team's obviously of higher quality than theirs was when they won the league. But I think City have left themselves too much to do. I mean, Haaland can score 1 million goals. It doesn't matter. You're still winning games. He can score till he's blue in the face. You keep doing what you're doing and you win the league, I think. So, I think...
You make it sound so easy, mate.
No, but I think this is the point of the season where, when I've got no skin in the game in that sense, when I look at it objectively, I just think, if you keep playing the way you have been playing all season, then you'll win the league now. There's no reason why Arsenal will come back. I mean, I hope not for your sake, but you'll come back from the international break and forget how you've played with 28 games and then implode. Don't do that, and then you'll win the league, I think.
I mean, yeah, it's obviously we're trying to be very cautious about it, and also because I think we remember very it's very raw still how the end of last season kind of ended up transpiring, and it was just
the Spurs thing.
Yeah, like the whole that run in
got
where
to
it was ours.
You've got to go to St James's Park again as well. I feel you're going to banish a few demons as well on the way to winning the league as well, because this team isn't the same as it was last year. You're mentally stronger, it seems. It seems that Arteta is much more aware of what he needs to do. The players have got the experience, it seems, of that pain at White Hart Lane last year and at St James's Park. You've really come on league more than I thought you could do in the space of the sort of drop off from last season, which obviously there was a lot of things that went wrong for that, the COVID stuff and all. It's neither here nor there, but you've learned a lot. There hasn't been any excuses when you've lost, I don't think. And I think when you've won, you haven't been particularly overzealous about it either. So I think, it's probably good for football if you win the league, and Man City have to rethink their strategy a little bit more. I do think Man City will win the Champions League though. So I think for them, they'll win something, but I think the league's yours now. I really do.
If they win the Champions League, they won't care about the Premier League. Will they really if they miss out on it? Just looking now to Crystal Palace, Kish, because we are, as Arsenal fans, hugely kind of hugely fond of Patrick Vieira, and club captain, club legend, more than captain, just legend. And obviously he's lost his job at Palace. I'm gonna kind of just in a fairly open-ended way, kind of however you want to talk about it. If we just look at the league table as well, right? You've basically got a situation where you've got the first 2 teams, and then you've basically got a chunk of teams going down from 3rd to 11th that basically have about 10, 12 points between them. And then basically there's like a 11-point drop off between Aston Villa at 11th and Crystal Palace. And then it's basically 12th to 20th are all in like a tight grouping. Palace at the top with 27 points. Southampton at the bottom with 23. That's mental how tight that is. And I mean, credit to Palace in some respects. You've got the worst form in the Premier League, having lost 4 in a row and drawing the one before that. I think Leicester have also lost 4 out of their last 5, but at least they've drew their last game. So in terms of strictly speaking, form wise, it's you guys. It's in the problem seat, if you like, but you're still top of that little pack. Now, can you just tell me a little bit about how you feel about, I suppose, what's happening in the league, and Patrick Vieira's sacking as a result? And guys, what I would love to do is please feel free for you to also jump in and ask Kish questions about this, and not just me. I mean, Kish, go for it. The league situation, sacking Vieira. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think obviously it's a lot more pertinent after losing 4-1 to you all because I think it doesn't look like a good decision in the short term to sack a manager and then go and lose 4-1. I think that's our second biggest defeat of the season behind the other North London team, no less, which is really annoying. But it seems a more confusing decision to see him be sacked on the Thursday. And then us go and play, the best team in the league on a Sunday, having spent all week probably planning for it. I think he has a right to feel hard done by, and I think, despite the performances not being great and they're not seeming to be a great plan, the plan he had, even though it wasn't great, it was better than the plan I saw today, which was poor, to say the least, and the execution poorer. We've obviously set a very low bar in the last 3 or 4 games in terms of our output through our shots not being on target and so on. So lots of the fans around me were considering a goal as an achievement, which is of course not an achievement in any way whatsoever because we lost 4-1. The fact that that we scored is irrelevant really. I think Vieira should feel that. I mean, he's very, very liked at the club. And when you were singing, I think it must have been from the 75th minute onwards, when you were singing about Patrick Vieira, I think there was only about 4 or 5 fans around me in the Palace end who were sort of like, no, we were better off without him. But the rest of them, no one else was, everyone was very like, well, probably shouldn't have really got rid of him. This is the nonsense we were going to have watch. And it really was. It was a good feeling higher for us at the time. And he was very unfortunate that he overachieved somewhat last year. We played some really nice stuff last year, and it was really cool to watch it working. And I think he's probably been dealt a really bad hand by the chairman and the club in general with the recruitment, but also that he hasn't been given the time to. I think we were always due a transition. Again, we're losing another 10 players in the summer. I think 7 or 8 out of contract. And I think the chairman really wanted him to get to the end of the season and give him some money and give him some newfound hope that we could do what we did in the first season again, because it's not as easy as, everyone figured us out this season, and we didn't have Conor Gallagher, we didn't have a few other players, fine. But I think he would be watching that game today and probably being really upset that he couldn't have, if we were going to lose 1-0, then fine, we'll live to fight another day. But no team in the league needs Easter more than we do. Like, that's the only thing I was thinking leaving the stadium. I'm so glad we're not playing for 10 days because we look lost, absolutely lost.
It was it was tough, I think, seeing you guys out there today from the perspective that it really did feel like it was a case where you kind of probably had a basic game plan at first, but then after that, there wasn't really, kind of the coach or the identity to try and kind of do something. But how do you feel, mate? Like, where you are in the table right now in the situation, there's been links with Roy Hodgson to come in and just, I don't know whether that's just purely from his experience to try and kind of keep you safe, or like, I guess, a lot of the critics around the sacking of Vieira have kind of pointed to the fact that actually you've got quite decent set of fixtures coming up now, and actually maybe if Vieira was still there, he would have been able to navigate it through just fine. I mean, how do you feel? Are you worried, mate, about relegation?
I'm always worried about relegation. I won't lie to you. Every season, I joke about this with you, obviously, but every year I keep an eye on the Championship every year because I'm always assuming we're going to go back there at some point. No, I don't know that the fixtures being favourable after the break is something you could lean on because we haven't won a game all year. A team who hasn't won a game all year can't be like, oh yeah, we've got some good fixtures coming. I think we're lucky that for somehow we've been 12 for 4 months. That's insane. We've not moved from 12th in 4 months, and that's testament to the poor teams below us. But the problem is that the poor teams have all made their moves now. Everton have done Dyche, Leeds have gone in, Southampton have done their bit, Wolves have got Leopard. They've all done their thing to renovate their squad, so to speak. I think I hark back to it, but as a Palace fan who's seen a lot of the things gone by, I don't really know what people expect Palace to be now going forward. If we're just going to be a club that is content with being a mid-table team, then we had the right manager for it. We had someone who at least was going to try and get us to a point where we were going to at least play nice football and try and do that. If we're going to go back to having managers who are firefighters or who are short-termers, and then this is just going to be really frustrating for we've been here for 10 years and we've had some really bad managers. Vieira was the dawn of a positive feeling at the club, which is really interesting that it's gone as quick as it came in that sense. Like even the singing and everything today, it felt flat from our side because I think we all felt that we don't know what we're doing. Like, you know, normally it's really strange, but normally when we sack a manager and we get one of the classics in, we have a plan. It's not a good plan, but we have a plan. Today felt very much like, does anyone know what we're doing? And I don't know that. I mean, I am worried about relegation because obviously with 3 points off bottom, you know, all it takes is, you know, Leeds to go and beat you somehow, or Southampton to get a result, and then we're bottom of the league. You know, and nobody wants to be bottom, you know, at any point in the season, but not this close as well, and be in this form we're in. I think I am worried, but I would also sort of say that we've got some good players, and I do think that those players need to probably reflect a little harder over this period and consider themselves, you know, because I think what was really frustrating today was that a lot of players thought they're better than they are, and that they were actually going to just, in general, the last sort of 2 or 3 months, that we're going to get ourselves out of this, and it's not happening. You know, we're still very dependent on Wilf, and we're still very unsure of ourselves in a final third. But manager-wise, Roy Hodgson, you know, it doesn't really matter who it is, really. They need to get this squad believing again that they can at least get another 4 wins, because I think that's what it will take. I think we're on 27 points, and I think if we can get another 12 points, I think that would be enough. We've got four out of the next 10. We've got Leicester, Leeds, Southampton, Forest, Wolves. We need to win 4 of those 10 games, you know, and then we can start thinking about the next steps. But yeah, I think, you know, to the initial points, I am worried about relegation, but I'm also not afraid of it. Like I've been, sadly, you know, I joked about it with you guys again earlier, but when we got relegated last time, I was stuck in the Championship for 8 years, you know, like 8 seasons in the Championship. It was just horrific, and you know, but I've seen it. It's in my recent memory. So yeah, I always expect us to go down at some point, but I'd hate to go down in a season like this where we've just not done anything. We've been, you know, it's almost like we've been relegated by default. We'd probably be the only team to have been 12th for as long as we have, and then finish 20th somehow. It'd be hilarious, but also annoying.
Miles, can you see Patrick Vieira getting another job in the Premier League anytime soon after this?
Probably, because I mean, Premier League managers, you know, I think everyone's set now for the rest of this season, but it won't be long before people start making changes in the summer. And then obviously there'll be a few teams that will have bad starts at the start of next season. And Premier League managers seem to get axed pretty quickly, and there seems to be a bit of a merry-go-round. So, I mean, I think so. I think I quite liked Patrick Vieira at City. At Palace. Like Kish was saying, he had a really good start, maybe overachieved last season. And maybe that was his downfall. And sometimes once it goes bad, it's quite hard to get back. And I think that's maybe just what happened with Vieira. But everything that I saw in regards to like his relationship with the club, his relationship with the players, like you see stuff on social media, it felt like he was a good match for Palace, and the players really, really liked him, and they really wanted to do well under him. So I think, you know, it seems like he's probably got the capability to go and manage another Premier League team. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see like where the vacancies might be come, let's say, you know, September, October, later on in the year, because obviously, yeah, loads of teams are going to be starting to change their managers. I'm not sure. So, but I don't know, like if the question was leading to a, you know, potential future Arsenal manager, I don't know if that's where the question was leading, but I'm not sure about that. In all honesty,
he's a long way. He would be a long way off that, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah,
he'll be Watford manager at some point in his life,
because he was being touted as a potential. I think when Emery left, or maybe before we got Emery in, I think he was being touted as a potential option. Similar to Arteta in a way, you know, quite inexperienced, and obviously it's worked up to now with Arteta. But yeah, like I agree. I think he's quite a way off him managing Arsenal, or a club like Arsenal.
The difference with that, for me, would be that your board, and I don't know how you feel about them, it'd be interesting actually, but you went through the tough times, you know, the 8th and the 8th. You really had to want to stick with Arteta. I think there was a point a couple of years ago where you lost 4 or 5 in a row, or even the start to last. You probably had a couple of opportunities to sack him, I think, and no one would have thought back. But they stuck with him, and he stuck with you, and I think it's paid off. I am surprised that, from our point of view, we've put all this time in. I think we should have given him to the end of the season. And if we'd got relegated, we'd be relegated. And if we'd, you know, but I think it takes a brave hierarchy to stick with it. I mean, I know you've got Edu helping as well and stuff, but it's testament to that. I think there's that also feeds into how I feel about our future.
I feel like they just never backed Vieira as well, in terms of, like, you touched on it as well, Kish, right, in the transfer market. Like, I feel like, if you're going to stay up in the Premier League, or you're going to be successful in the Premier League, you, especially the kind of mid-table or lower down the table, you need a player who's going to score you goals. And I don't think Palace have really got that. Like, if Zaha's not scoring goals, who's scoring you goals? And, like, that was never really addressed. Like, Edouard was probably the guy that you guys were looking towards as that player, but it hasn't really happened for him. And then you're looking at, like, Ayew, who's, like, I think Raj said he scored, like, what was the stat? 3 goals in.
It's a ridiculous
entire life
actually,
or something.
it's like a much lower amount of goal, because you probably know it more. I think, but it's something like really random. Like, I think he averages a goal a season or something like this.
Yeah, well, he definitely didn't have a very good last year, but there was a couple of years ago he scored like 16 for us or something ridiculous. But he's been played out of position a lot of his time. And your point's valid. Like, we haven't got the depth in squad, which is very apparent that we're playing 4 or 5 players that I'm sure played for us in the Championship. And on top of that, if we're not scoring goals, you're not creating chances. But regardless of that, I think Vieira was dealt bad hand with player recruitment, but we've shown as a club that we don't really want to invest unless half our team's out of contract. And that's why I thought, with the other half of our team being out of contract this summer, that we probably are going to reinvest. And it would have just been so much nicer if it was Vieira doing it, because he's already done the first phase of that. The next person coming in, whoever it is going to have different ideas. He might not even like the first phase of people Vieira got in, and we're going to be back to where we started. And I just think they've pulled the trigger just a little bit early. I mean, I've said it a couple of times. I've changed my mind a couple of times this week, but I've actually landed on the position that if they were going to get rid of him anyway, and it sounded like there was already some confusion as to what he was going to do at the end of the year, then he would have been the best person to try and keep us up. I was thinking about this just before I came on. I want Patrick Vieira back, I think, because I think actually the easiest thing to do is give the squad was still playing for him. You're right, and we were very unlucky against Brentford, and we'd looked drawn games. We'd gone tight against United and Chelsea and a few other things, but we needed a bit more firepower. But after today's performance, we really need to come up with a solution quicker than it seems that we got rid of him.
To close out the show, can we talk about Tottenham for a little while? Because it has been maybe there's people who've been tuning in just for this. So people have been waiting 56 minutes for us to actually talk about Tottenham. Look, some people are calling it the most explosive interview by a manager in, kind of Premier League history. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's certainly pretty shocking. Antonio Conte has basically come out the other day, yesterday, after they've thrown away a 3-1 lead away at bottom team Southampton. It's a 3-3 draw in the end. And he's basically exploded, and he's effectively said that the players have no real desire. They're used to not having to play for anything. Maybe this is what they're like. It's not surprising given Tottenham haven't won anything for 20 years. You've got to look at the owners, and has effectively said, well, they could sack me, but if they sack me, it wouldn't be any different. Any other manager's going to have the same problem. They still won't win anything. He's basically said words to all that kind of effect. I heard that apparently today he's come out and clarified that actually he meant all his criticisms at the players and it wasn't at the board. So I don't know if some conversations have happened internally and he's had to come out and clarify that. But I mean, Aaron, tell me, it's weird because Tottenham are 4th, so they're not actually doing that badly. Actually, even if you look at form-wise, out of their last 5 games, I think they've won 3. So it's not even like they've been that bad over the last. Yeah, they've won 3 out of their last 5. Only lost 1 out of their last 5. But he's come out swinging, absolutely swinging, taking everyone down with him. What do you think? What's the situation with Conte and what's the situation at Tottenham?
I think it's. I mean, nobody's surprised, right? When Spurs got Conte in, everyone saw this coming. Right? Nobody said this is going to be. We've seen it. He did it at Chelsea, did it at Milan. He just eventually throws his toys out the pram, and then he tries to get himself the sack. But it's still really bloody funny just to watch, because I really hope he stays for the next 5 years and just gradually just that stadium collapses and he just rips the whole thing apart. Not to clarify, the stadium collapses not when there's anyone in it. Not wishing any injuries or anything like that. He just everything just go backwards forever. And I think we're talking.
But it's he's not going to be there for 5 years, though, is he? Because his contract's up at the end of the season.
Apparently,
Yeah.
I think he's got an option for extension. I hope Daniel Levy, just to piss him off, just extends it, just to wind him up.
He's
and gives
he's
him an
off,
extra
mate.
year.
Obviously, he's
Yeah.
not staying. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he left tomorrow, right? So he's definitely not going to be there next season.
And which is a shame because it is really funny. And but I mean, the thing with Tottenham is that I think the problem is like Spurs, for some reason, over the last 5 or 6 years, have just got this delusion that they have to be better than what they're doing now. Like they've consistently finished 4th, 5th, or in and around there. And for some reason, that isn't good enough for Tottenham fans. And I'm just like, where have you got this impression from? Like, where have you got this impression from that Spurs should be higher than 4th in the table? Like, based on what logic? Because they haven't won a trophy for God knows how long. They're not going to win the league. They're probably never going to win the league in their history. So, what more do they want? They want to win an FA Cup, and FA Cup is a bit of a lottery. Every cup is a bit of a lottery. Like, what more do they actually want, right? And the only reason I can think of that Spurs fans are so annoyed this season is because of us. I think it's pure. If we were 6th, Spurs fans would be delighted, right? Last season, they were lingering around 6th or 5th, thinking they had a brilliant season because they just pipped us because we bottled 4th. And they were thinking this is the best season we've had in years. But actually, they've been pretty average for the last 5-6 years, in my opinion. And the only reason that, they're throwing the toys out the pram now is because we've finally got our act together. But in history, in real talk, we should have been above them the last 3 or 4 years, but we messed that up. So it's what do they want? Like what is success for Tottenham?
It's interesting, Aaron, because I agree with what you're saying. Like, obviously, it's kind of been similar for Arsenal in some ways, right? When Arsenal the last few years, when we've been pretty bad, you still kind of hope that we finish above Spurs because it gives you that tiny little bit of joy. Even if Arsenal are crap, Spurs are even worse, and that hasn't really happened, obviously. But I think if you're a Tottenham fan, it's quite interesting because I think there's so many different scales of Tottenham fans, and we were talking about this before the game, but people that I know who are Spurs fans, they're generally quite grounded and level-headed, let's say. Their expectation is they just want to win a trophy. They just want to experience that feeling probably before they die. Just at least once in their lifetime, what is it like to actually win, some silverware? But I think if you look at kind of how their season's panned out the last few weeks, that second leg against Milan was awful. I mean, I didn't watch the whole game, but it was considering they needed to, obviously needed a result and they were at home. It was pathetic, to be honest. And then they went out to Sheffield United in the cup again. I think it's more like they've probably put themselves in a half decent position, going into the end of the season to maybe not win the cup, maybe not win the Champions League, obviously, but at least progress in those competitions to the latter stages and see what happens, whilst kind of maintaining a top 4 position. And then arguably that's something to build on for next season. But I think for them, it probably feels like it's the same old again, where they're ending the season trophyless. And even though they're sitting in 4th at the moment, I think the teams below them have all got plenty of games in hand where they could easily be 6th or 7th, because I think it's Newcastle have got a couple, Liverpool have got a couple of games in hand, and Brighton have got a few as well. So I think if all of those teams win all of their games, then Spurs could, potentially be dropping into, not mid-table, but 7th position. So I mean, the Conte thing is hilarious, but I feel like you say that was always coming. He had an outburst. Must have been last season. They lost to Burnley, and post-match he absolutely lost it, and he started just going for everyone.
They won games after that, didn't they?
And then they won games, and obviously came back. Yeah, but I don't know. I think most Spurs fans I know, they just want to win a trophy. But I think naturally they, the comparisons with us, or the levels for them is, as Aaron has said, if they can do better than us, then that's something that they look at. But I don't know, man. I think it must be even harder for them, the fact that we're top of the league, right? It must be so hard for them to see what they're doing, and they're really not going anywhere at the moment. And Arsenal are kind of been flying for the last 12 months or so. So it must be pretty hard. But yeah, I mean, look, we're all here to enjoy it, aren't we? As long as it lasts as long as possible, hopefully.
Kish, is it all noise from your perspective? Like, as in, where is all the angst coming from? Is it validated?
Spurs, well, no, I don't think it is. I think Spurs fans don't know how good they've had it, and I know every Spurs fan will tell me about the time they won the FA Cup in '91 or whatever, and I'll completely tell them I don't care. But I think in general, Levy's done a good job getting them from where they were to where he is in his tenure, and he's made them an actual sustainable club with a brilliant stadium.
They all want him out. They want him out.
I mean, Spurs fans genuinely haven't had it as good as they really haven't. If you told them 15 or 10 years ago that your last 2 or 3 managers would be Mourinho, Conte, you'd be in a Champions League final. I mean, Harry Kane would be their all-time top goal scorer. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know, and it's weird that they're so invested in Arsenal, because it's weird for me because obviously Palace's rivals historically are Millwall's and Charlton and stuff, but I don't care enough to constantly be looking for their results and wishing they're complete free fall, and quite why they need to get their own house in order. And what Spurs fans should really look to is, this idea that they need to be validated by being better than Arsenal. They need to sort themselves out. Well, I had fans around me today talking about Arsenal, and I said, well, why do you care what Arsenal are doing? We're losing 4-1. We need to worry about what we're doing. And I think Spurs fans can't, I think Conte is fed up and he wants out. He's got about 50 million in the bank from Chelsea and multiple brilliant sackings he's had. Quite why he needs us in his life. He's had a very bad year, on a personal, you can see he's been unwell. His friends have passed away. He doesn't need this. Quite why he just won't walk away is beyond me. I think he's either a real lover of pain and enjoys this, or genuinely believes that Daniel Levy's going to wake up tomorrow and say, do you know what, actually, I'm going to give you 100 million. Go and get these guys. Let's go for it. Otherwise, why would he keep coming back for this nonsense? Because he's won trophies. He knows how to win things. He said it himself. He doesn't do 7th, 8th. He doesn't do this. So why is he still there? He should go. I mean, I genuinely think he should have a bit more self-respect, because you can call out the fans and the board, but they pay your wages. They put you there. And if you're that angry about it, then go and die on your hill. Go and leave. You've got so much money. You're not a young manager who might not never get a job. He'll be an Italian manager again. He'll get Juve's job. It's very weird, I think, all of it. And I think
why is he saying 7th, 8th, Kish? Why is he saying that when they're 4th now anyway?
Because I mean, that capitulation against Southampton was pretty special, even by Spurs standard. But I would be that annoyed if Spurs fans are annoyed still. But they've got a top 6 squad, but you're not going to win anything with Eric Dyer in your team. You don't need me to tell you that. It's ridiculous. But Romero is an absolute idiot. He just can't control himself, can he? Why can't he just be a normal defender? Why can't he just focus on defending? Without, he won the World Cup being good. He wasn't actually that bad. I know it helped. He had a lot of good players around him, but Spurs haven't again got the best out of the players around him. The Richarlison thing's weird. Don't sign him for 50 million, then call him shit, then call each other. It's ridiculous. No one seems to be getting along there, but they're still in 4th. But they'll find a way to upset themselves. And yeah, Arsenal will probably win the league, like I said, and they'll be really annoyed about it. But that isn't the point, is it? What they need to do is start thinking about what they want going forward. I don't know that Poch is the answer for them either. So, I think the Spurs fans in general, if you met a rational one, they'd probably be the ones that Mize were talking about that would want to win a trophy. And but how you go about that? Don't drop Harry Kane against Sheffield United. Play your strongest team. You had AC Milan at home. You didn't lay a glove on them. They didn't even break a sweat. So you've had your opportunities to get yourself into a position to at least give a shit. The funniest thing is that they're dying to get into a competition that they have no chance of winning. They keep getting into it to not trying it. It's so confusing. Let's finish 4th and then go out in the round of 16 every year. It's baffling. I know they got to the final 5 years ago before anyone starts sending me hate mail, but that was ridiculous. But then
actually in that scenario, are they not cutting distinct parallels from when Arsenal moved into the Emirates under Wenger, where it was a case where qualifying for the Champions League was the most important thing to keep that stadium payments kind of going, and it wasn't about doing well in the Champions League. If we did well in Champions League, fine, whatever. But you weren't building a squad. Arsenal weren't building a squad to win the Champions League. It was all about qualifying. And Spurs not in that situation now where they reluctantly have to accept that they've built this magnificent stadium, and the only way they can pay for it is by finishing in the top 4. But actually, the delta from trying to finish in the top 4 to win the league and win the Champions League, it's just too much for that period.
Yeah, I remember you all having problems obviously afterwards, but Spurs have spent money. You know, this
Yeah.
misnomer that someone seems to have been spreading out that they've been struggling, they're paupers. They spent an absolute ton of money in the last 2 seasons on some absolute poor players. Like I know Porro's not been there very long, but like I said, Emerson Royale, Porro, Romero, all these, that's like 100 million there already.
Yeah.
You know, that's I've never known Daniel Levy to be so generous ever. So quite what, you know, if he didn't want, like, the Spence thing is weird. You know, signing for 15 million, he's played 6 minutes and they've shipped him off to France. Didn't want him, said it, he didn't want him. All of it's weird. The body language, it's like, you know, Conte's there in spirit, but he wants to sign all his players. But it's not going to work like that. Daniel Levy is never going to let you be king of the castle. But they probably have teething problems for the stadium going forward, but the stadium looks incredible and it'll be a legacy for them going forward. So I think Spurs fans, you know, if they're going to take some positives out of this podcast, not that I don't know any Spurs fans listen to it, is that you've got a beautiful stadium. You've got the best striker or second best striker in the league. You know, you've got a record. You know, they've got things that they'll probably sell him and make some money, and then be able to try and reinvest probably going forward. I mean, I hope Harry Kane leaves because it really will make them a mid-table team again. But yeah, it's always confused me. I know the rivalry. You know, you guys know it better than me. It's your rivalry, but they, you know, if they finished 19th, they'd just be happy if you finished 20th. It just makes no sense. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it's just get your own house in order. Like, I don't know that I know it's easy for you all because you're top of the league, but I don't know how devastated you are if you're like, you know, what Spurs doing. It's not ideal, but you've never struck me as people are always worried about what Spurs are doing. Like, it's just
I mean,
such
it
a strange
softens the
concept.
blow if they're doing worse than us for sure. But like, you know, I think it's a really good point about the fact that they have spent lots of money. So that's a real difference from the fact that when we moved into a stadium and we're like, you know, it was all net spend. They've been spending your money. They've been spending it really random things. I mean, Nikhil in the comments here just talking about Danjuma. I mean, he's one of a list of
Where's Yves Basuma? Does he play for Spurs? He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Where's that guy? Like, completely, he's just people just unbelievable. He was like 30 million. He could have played for like Real Madrid. Apparently, it's baffling. Like,
yeah. I mean, Aaron, what's your take? Like, is this a case where they've got to be really careful about how they manage Conte's situation? Because for all his flaws, he's a sort of a serial winner. He got them in the top 4 last season. They're 4th now. And what guarantee do they have of someone else coming in an environment where you've got teams not only who are already above them, but teams like Chelsea, like Newcastle, who have got shed loads of money, who are building, you know, have got big plans. You've got Liverpool probably going to come back into the fold. Are they as in Tottenham in precarious ground at the moment in terms of understanding what their key next steps are, their critical path, if you like, to making sure that they don't just get left behind with a massive stadium debt they can't really pay off, and you know, all of a sudden it becomes a case of, all right, well, it's not even about top 4 anymore. It's about how we stop from getting ourselves into a serious financial black hole.
Yeah, I think the problem is they've got this notion of like this is the best Spurs team ever, with like Kane, Son, Kulusevski, and everyone. And I think because especially with when they had Kane and Son like 2-3 years ago after they got rid of Poch, I think there was this belief that like they had to capitalize on this because this was it. So they went in and got like they've just got short-term managers who are win now managers who they believe that they could like just get them something to make the most of this generation, and that hasn't happened. And now they basically have to admit that they're going to get worse in order to get better. They have to get worse to get better. And I don't know if Levy or the fans are able to accept that. They basically, it sounds a bit cliche, that they kind of just need to do what we did with Arteta to say, like, look, we might be 8th for 2 seasons in a row, but this is the guy we're going to let rebuild our squad. And you know, they need to do basically what you look at a club like Brighton, for example. Sorry, Kish, but like they've got a plan and they're like incrementally improving season on season, right? And they possibly are going to be challenging for Europe this season. Like that's what Spurs need to do. They need to go back to a baseline of probably mid-table for a season and just rip. Like Kane will be moved on, Son will be moved on. Like Richarlison probably needs to be moved on. All that Deadwood that Kish just mentioned, like they need to move them on, and they need to work out like what is the plan. Are we going to go in on youth? Are we going to go in on like experience value scouting? Are we going to go in for I don't know, experienced pros? Are we going to do the whole British core thing? Like, there's loads of different ways of doing it, but they just need to figure out what way to do it, and they need to go and like commit. But I don't know if Levy's that patient. I don't know if Levy's that smart, and I don't know if their fans are going to be able to like tolerate that, especially if we're ahead of them in that sense.
It's really baffling you're saying that though, because we were talking earlier, and you said they probably have what, the 5th or 6th best team squad in the league. I think you said, like,
Yeah,
but they're
right
fourth.
now, yeah.
But they're fourth, and the players they've bought, they're overachieving in theory. All the players are working out because they're fourth.
Oh, I agree.
Like, it's really baffling that no one on this call thinks they could finish in the top 3. Or at the start of the season, that was a top 3 team. So they're overachieving with a manager who's overachieving, and they're now. I mean, this idea that they have to get rid of him, I think they've got good players. I think that it's just that where else are they going to go? They can't finish in the top 3. They're doing the best that they can. So again, it goes back to your initial point. I have no idea what Spurs fans really want from this team, but I think they're only ever going to be able to finish 4th, and they're overachieving anyway. So I don't even know they have to get rid of that much dead wood. I just think they're have to accept that there's a barrier now that they just can't break. And how do you break it? Spend 300 or 400 million maybe. They're never going to do that. So it's just a strange concept. But I think your point was right initially, that if they're going to move all these people on and go down a strategy, Levy's not up for that. He's not, he can't be that far off, thinking about his next moves and his legacy, and he's going to want to not leave it with them being a mid-table team. So I don't know what you all think about where you thought Spurs were going to finish at the start of the season, but I assume you thought you'd finish above them. So in theory, what you thought you'd maybe finish 3rd, and they finished 4th. So they're go on, buddy.
But I think this is what annoys Tottenham fans, right? Because what I was going to say to answer your question is, before the transfer window started in the summer, I was worried about Tottenham, and I was worried the fact that they finished in the top 4, we didn't. They can attract Champions League level players, we couldn't. So I was worried about what they do. I was less worried after the window when I felt that we had a better window. I felt that we signed players like Jesus and Zinchenko, and they were massively better, I felt, than what Spurs had done. And I guess that would annoy Spurs. Spurs fans would probably look back at the window and wonder why they didn't navigate it better. Given, yes, they spent money, but why couldn't they have got players who may well have taken them to the next level? And why was it that Arsenal were able to get those players when Arsenal weren't a Champions League side? And maybe that's their angst when it comes down to it. Yes, what do they expect? It's a really good question. But maybe what they kind of are getting a bit frustrated about is the fact that you've like you said, you've spent money, so the money has been there, right? Like that's, you can't argue with that. And so why did they spend it in that way? Why couldn't they have spent it better?
I mean, on paper, mate, like Richarlison on paper is a signing that probably makes quite a bit of sense. I know that he's not, like we said it before in the pub, right? He's probably not a 60-odd million pound player, whatever they paid for him, but he's Premier League proven. He does get goals and assists. He's a player that he's probably Everton's best player for the last couple of seasons. So that kind of made sense. Bissouma made a lot of sense. Like when they signed Bissouma, I think that's quite early on in the window. Arsenal were linked with him for the last couple of windows before that, and there were a lot of Arsenal fans that were like, "Why have we not gone in for him?" This is before we signed everyone that we signed. So I can't remember who else they signed last summer, but they've made a lot of signings that on paper should have worked out, but they just, like Kulusevski, for example, has been very good up until probably the last kind of like period, like I don't know, last few months. I think he came back from injury, not really quite been the same. But when he came into the team, he looked like one of the best attacking players in the league at one point. So I don't know. I feel like, if you look at kind of just from the top down, and especially when you look at like the stuff that Conte's coming out with and the way that he's kind of leading the team, and you compare that to Arsenal's structure, Arsenal's plan, Arsenal's kind of philosophy, everything, it's like Aaron said, they kind of started from scratch, ripped it all up, started from scratch. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what Spurs have to do, but if you kind of look at how the guy at the forefront, the face of the club, Antonio Conte, how he's operating, I think it must be quite difficult in terms of like expecting like performances and expecting progression, because ultimately I think even if they've got the players like on paper and they've got they do have some really good really good players, is it really ever going to work under a manager like that? He doesn't play particularly attractive football, and ultimately, therefore, the way that he sets up, you need to have a solid kind of back five, or you need to have your defense locked down, and then you build from that. They don't really have that. Like Kish was saying, Romero's just like all over the place, such a random, erratic defender. Like they don't really, like Eric Dyer, he's not a particularly great defender, excuse me. So I don't know. I just feel like there's so many things to fix there. But the annoying thing is they potentially could still finish top 4 and still be in the Champions League next season, and then build on that. And who knows? But they're never gonna challenge City for the league. I can't see it anytime soon. Can't see them ever taking that leap up to where they should. If you're finishing top 4 consistently, that's the next step, right? It's like becoming a title challenger. I just can't see them ever doing that.
They shouldn't be annoyed or compare it in an Arsenal sense that you stuck with a manager who had a personal relationship, in the Man City context. You signed 2 very good players from Man City, but that's because Arteta, he was able to pull that off. I'm sure he didn't just say, "Oh, go and buy them." I'm sure that helps, and I think Conte probably has people like that he could have gone to. And
Bentancur and Kulusevski are Juventus
so
players,
so you signed players that were in your grasp. But I don't know that it was that just because you stuck with a manager, you gave him you enabled him to do that. I think he doesn't feel enabled to get what he needs to get out of certain players or the squad. And again, it seems like Levy's making more of the signings than he is, and that's probably adding to the frustration. But I think like Miles was saying, like you've all said, that they themselves have to what is the point of finishing 4th to keep going out on the same stage every year? Is it for the money then? Because if it is, then Conte isn't the right man for that. They should get Poch. Poch is a yes man. He will happily toe the party line on more things than not. So it's yeah.
And allegedly Poch has moved back into the North London area, so who knows? Maybe it is on the cards. But anyway, guys, I think we're probably going to have to wrap it up there. This has been the Tottenham topic. Has probably been the topic that we talked about the most on this episode. I mean, it's something that we can all unite on, right? Arsenal, Palace fans, everything's all very, very interesting. I hope any Tottenham fans that did listen enjoyed it. I mean, Kish, your kind of point about Tottenham fans who listen to the pod. Our most watched episode ever is the one where Tottenham battered us at White Hart Lane or whatever.
Aaron can't go to he can't go to Tottenham anymore, can he? He can't go to
like
Tottenham
literally
away.
our most watched episode is that, and all the comments are just full of Tottenham fans just abusing us basically. So for some reason they wanted to give an hour of their time to watch an Arsenal podcast. But anyway, okay.
As I mentioned earlier, pal, you wait about 6 or 7 games, you can start giving them a lot of stuff back. There'll be a trophy to show off. I think. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Kish, thanks, man. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to have you on and have the other perspective from the other side of the stadium today. As always, you've really helped educate us on everything that's going on at Palace. And it's been really interesting to hear you also reflect on what you think about Arsenal. And obviously, this chat about Tottenham at the end has been fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed it on the show and hope you'll be back again soon.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love Omen. I said at the start, you've done a great job to get to 100, and it's been brilliant to be on here. And I think you get strength to you guys, more power to you guys. It's a great pod, and like I said, it's actually really refreshing. Everyone's very honest and open about things on here, and I don't think it's tribal. That's the beauty of this pod. I don't think we're here to bash Tottenham. It's just a beautiful coincidence. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Objective bashing, I love it, guys. Thank you very much. Also thanks in the comments, loads of comments today. Nikhil, thank you, mate. Thank you for the comments. Like Shani, Nav, Aravind, Digi. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, this is not good for China time, but I hope you get to listen to the pod tomorrow. Listen, everyone, thank you very, very much. Have a good night. We are 8 points clear at the top of the table. Got leads after the international break, but we go into a little period now where we can just enjoy being top with a little bit of a buffer. And let's then head into the last 10 games, which is going to be fucking, squeaky bum time, isn't it? But and I suppose for Palace as well. So for different reasons. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye.